and away we go. I'm a bit of a minimalist, so you'll notice that within my slides, you will have access to the entire deck. You will have access to all the resources that are linked in the deck. You'll have access to a folder, so you will be good to go. So I love this graphic. Thank you, Tony, for putting it together. So a little bit about me. If you did not get a chance to watch the video that Sean so accurately put together with me, a little bit about me. I was actually, for years, I was a church musician. I was actually a music teacher. So as I like to say, when you're standing in front of 80 7th and 8th graders, I was a chorus teacher. Yeah, you better be marketing. You better be selling a lot and quickly. And then I moved over to church music, and well, I kind of needed a side hustle. And so I got involved in this thing that my daughter was involved with, All-Star Cheer, and they needed music, and I couldn't believe what some of these producers were charging. So I started doing that. Of course, All-Star Cheer, like any sports organization, was very expensive. And so I got a little break on the tuition. So I was able to do that. So created a website, basically created an online music production company. And of course, what does everybody do when they create their first website? How do I get more people? You Google it. How do I get more people to my website? And that was my side hustle for a while. And I found this thing called HubSpot. And then I found this thing called HubSpot Academy. And I was able to shift into a second career doing that. So I went to Inbound 19. That was the last Inbound that I went to live. And I met this guy, if you're looking at this picture here. I don't know if you could see it, but his name is Marcus Sheridan. And not only is he one of the co-owners of Impact, but he wrote this little book called They Ask You Answer. And I really liked it because we talk about teaching someone how to do something versus just doing it for them. And so, yes, Marcus is a legend. And so I dreamed of working for Impact. I actually started at Impact last year through a series of just unconnected, weird, just coincidences. I now get to work with, well, actually, Marcus does a lot of communication training with us. I absolutely love it. So outside of HubSpot, love my wife, Christy. I have 3 kids. I got 2 dogs. And on the weekends, I still do the music thing just to keep it alive and everything. So enough about me. Let's get into the one thing that we want to get to for today. Now, today is all about HubSpot hygiene, keeping your data clean. And some of these things you may remember. Some of these things you may know. Some of these things you may say, oh, yeah, I really should do that. Or you may say, you know what, of the 5 things, Smith, that you just listed, I know about 2 or 3 of them. So I'm hoping that you pull away at least 1 or 2 few things from today's session that you can immediately implement and make a change, not only in your HubSpot portal for yourself, for your future self as well, but also for your organization. And so what I want you to walk away with for this one thing is the monthly discipline of cleaning and organizing your HubSpot portal is essential to your organization, especially for the people that are directly working within HubSpot. And so with that, let's jump right into it. First of all, your link right here is going to open up the folder that you have access to all of these resources that I'll be providing throughout here. But really, it comes down to 4 things here. We're going to talk about first, the toughest thing, and that is performing a HubSpot audit. Second, I'll walk you through a process that I like to use to quarterly, make sure that you're cleaning up quarterly. And then we're going to organize everything. And you may do this already. Like folders, there are folders everywhere in HubSpot. And so if you're not organizing in folders, this may be one thing that you pull away from today. Use those folders. And then finally, when you start moving things around, whenever my son comes home from college, he always says to my wife, hey, you move the forks from here to there, or you move the dishes from here to there. Every time I come home, I can't find anything. And so while we are not nerdy enough in the Smith family to document things that have moved in the kitchen or in the home while my son's at school, it's important that you document how you are using or how your organization is using HubSpot. If for no other reason, tomorrow you win the lottery and you're like, see ya, you'll have a document that you can leave behind that says this blank, this is how blank, insert your company name here, uses HubSpot on a regular basis. And yeah, I'm sure some of you are probably like doing the, oh yeah, I could have had a V8, but documentation is going to be so important. And so we're going to review best ways to document in when we're using HubSpot. So let's get right to it. Let's start with the toughest thing first. Let's go ahead and start with auditing. What's the feeling you get when you work in a cluttered, disorganized, kind of awful kind of environment? For me, for the Smith family, let me give you you can always tell when we're busy. I do the music thing on the weekends sometimes. My wife and I volunteer at our church a lot. And so you can always tell when we're busy because our kitchen island becomes a dumping ground for everything, whether it's book bags, whether it's sports equipment, whether it's just general groceries that should make their way into the pantry, whatever it is. You can always tell when we are busy because the island just gets totally full. And we do not have a very large kitchen island because then it goes into the kitchen table. And then we usually try to keep it off the floor because, again, we have 2 dogs. And so you can always tell when we are disorganized. And so what that leads to is nobody wants to cook in the kitchen. So what we end up doing is we end up ordering DoorDash or ordering pizza. And so now we're spending extra money instead of doing the work that needs to get done. And so what I'm getting at is if you can organize and keep this clutter together, you'll not only save money, you'll not only save time, but you'll have the peace of mind knowing that I can find whatever data leadership needs, whatever data your sales team needs, whatever data marketing needs, whatever data you need quickly. And so let's jump right into how are we going to audit your HubSpot portal. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go to your security settings. Okay, so let me share this tab right here. This is in Impact's portal, and this is in the general account preferences. First, check your own security settings. As you can see here, great example. Maybe this is a little too small for you, but the last time I reset my password was almost a year ago, actually more than a year ago. And so I'm checking out all of my security settings within HubSpot to say, okay, do I have 2-factor authentication set up? Do I have, what is my personal thing first? Because when you look at your personal security settings, if you're expecting other people to change, or if you're going to change their security settings, make sure that you're not asking your organization or your team to do something that you are not willing to do. So that's the first thing that you should do, is go into your security settings, personal security settings, and check to make sure that these are all in line. The next thing you should do is jump over to your account security. And of course, this is so important because security, more and more, privacy is getting to be more and more important. And when I say that you should check your score, this is what I'm talking about right here. Because a lot of times we're not sure. We don't know how many super admins we have. We have to check a list in order to get that. The Security Center will give you the information that you need, tell you what your rating is, what's happening, and what your score is, what you should, and how to resolve it, really. And so, and I love some of these descriptions in here. Having too many super admin puts a lot of power into the hands of many users. And so it's so important to get this Security Center score so that you know where you can improve, because this will actually reveal a lot of data things that you're going to need to, that you're going to want to address as we start cleaning things up. But it really starts with the people that are in your HubSpot portal. Too many super admins. And I know it's easy just to go, you know what, I'll just make you a super admin. But we're going to talk about permissions a little bit later and how important they are when it comes to security, because that's really going to help you keep your HubSpot portal organized. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. Go to your security settings in your audit and just find it right there. Very simple. It was just a simple come to settings, go to your general, security is here, and then you can go to your account settings here. The next thing that I would recommend is take a look at your audit log. Now, this is enterprise only. What I recommend is, and this is actually a knowledge document here, so to help you with some of your preferences, okay? Yeah, that score is actually, yeah, Tony, that is a new thing that is in there. They're adapting it because security is so important. So yeah, so you're gonna like this because if you've logged in every day in the last 10 years for this, Tony, I'm gonna have you. And if you could relate to this, what I would recommend is coming over here. There's two places. There's a new thing, and this is available to everybody, and that's your audit logs. You can basically see, and Tony, if you want to check in that, if you've logged into HubSpot nearly for the last 10 years, you can check this on your own. Go ahead and take a look at this to see what have people been doing. Now, for on all across all platforms, across all hubs, whatever subscription you have, you can at least see the last time somebody signed in. On enterprise, you can check to see what those actions are. You can segment those actions. You can segment by anyone. You can segment by anyone that's in your portal, by by object. You can segment by workflows. Hey, my workflow is totally messed up. Who logged in and did this? You can check this by login. So even if you're not on enterprise, you can still come in here and you can take a look at, okay, what's been happening in here? Not to be a super sleuth or not to place the blame on anybody, but if there's something weird going on, you can actually take these audit logs and then you can export them as a report. That is an enterprise function only. But if it's one of those things that you need to see, okay, who was the last person that signed in? Who was the last person that did this? This gives you more information to help you realize where your data is going, where your data is getting messed up. So this is a very high level overview to help you do that detective work that you need to do to get what you need as far as data is concerned and who's responsible for it. You can even, if you're on enterprise, you can segment by dates. So for everybody, you can check your audit log. You can check to see who signed in when. I always like to see, okay, who's the first few people? How early are y'all signing into HubSpot? That's what I want to know. So I always check that in the morning just to see, hey, who's been there? Just, I don't know, maybe I just, as we say in Pittsburgh, yep, 7 a.m. every day. As we say in Pittsburgh, I like to be nebby, which is just a fancy Pittsburghese word for being nosy. So that's the first two things that I would recommend, that you take a look at your security settings, you take a look at your audit logs, and you take a look and see, okay, what's happening in my portal. So not really a new feature, but definitely something that HubSpot's been working on because this security is going to be so important. Why is security so important? Again, it goes back to your data and why that's important there. The next thing I recommend is setting up your original source view. We're going to go ahead and jump into there we go. This is a test portal, so there's not going to be a lot of data in here. But this is my original source view. And of course, you can save as many views as you want. I'm sure many of you have used views before, so it's important to create this particular view because, again, now we're not going to get any lightning details here. Nothing's really connected. Again, this is Impact's test portal. And so if we look at this original source drill down 1, original source drill down 2, this is the next step as far as I'm concerned once you check those security. Because if I'm looking at this, especially if I'm about to jump on a call with a client, I want to see, okay, is there any anomaly here that I am just like, whoa, where did this come from? Now, obviously here, we're only going to be looking at original source and offline sources and extensions and things like that, because it looks like Mandy has her email still connected to our test portal. But what this does is it shows you at a glance, okay, anything weird happening here? Any sources that are just not firing, number one, any sources that I'm expecting that are not coming up, or anything that's just getting really strange. I'll give you an example. I had there was a contest with a client that I was working with, and we got a tremendous amount of traffic from referrals. And so we're thinking, referrals, what's this coming from? This particular contest was actually picked up by one of those websites that just posts contests and nothing else. And so what ended up happening here was you're kind of like, where is this coming from? And we wanted to double check just to make sure that this wasn't spam. We investigated the website. We took a look at what was happening. Is this essentially, we kind of followed the trail here to say, okay, is this data that's going to be okay for me? Is this data that I want to have coming into my HubSpot portal? Is this data that is going to be helpful, or will it be detrimental to me? An original source, and just taking a look at it at a glance. Obviously, this is through, I do it by the date, the create date. Checking that will then help you kind of hedge off any data, dirty data that you don't want have coming in. It's a good thing to check these things. However, when it comes to data cleanliness, backtrack and find out where these odd anomalies are coming from and move from there. Next item, set up a to be deleted list for hard bounced contacts. Now, if anyone here is on a sales team, this next statement, just don't shoot the messenger. Sales teams sometimes can be, with their contacts, can be kind of kleptomaniacs. I just know that contact from 2008, they're going to convert. I'm pretty sure they're going to convert. Now, when you set up a to be deleted list for hard bounce contacts, if you were to just go in there and just delete contacts, you're going to set yourself up for a pretty big battle within your organization. So what I'm recommending, just don't tell them. I love it, Liz. That's hilarious. They never notice. But when you set up a to be deleted list and you say, hey, this is going away next month, all of a sudden we figure out that, or we discipline ourselves, or the sales team, or whoever belongs to these leads, all of a sudden they discipline themselves and are kind of like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to lose these, I better figure out if they're still viable. And you can help them with that if you're on the marketing team. You have re-engagement and things like that, or you can do the re-engagement and say, hey, this is what's going to happen in about a month. And here's why, because these people either hard bounced or whatever. You can do the same to be deleted for low engagement, things like that. However you want to set up those parameters. But if you set up a list that says to be deleted, and then make sure that you are disciplining yourself to delete them after the next month, then you should be good. So setting up a to be deleted list for hard bounce contacts, or whatever parameters you would prefer. Let's talk about our first resource here. Let's do this cleanup process. I'm not going to read this to you, but keep in mind that this is available to you for contact cleanup. We have 4 phases here, and part of that is that to be deleted, or removing all unengaged or dead contacts and things like that. And then after that, we have a property cleanup process. Again, I'm not going to read this to you because you'll have access to this along with the recording, all this good stuff. Tony and Sean will get you all set up for everything. But let's just talk about one thing when it comes to property cleanup, because that can be kind of a daunting task. And I don't want you to forget about chatspot.ai. Don't forget about ChatSpot when you are getting ready to do some of this cleaning. So if you have used ChatSpot, go ahead and let's see, put in the chat either yes or put a robot emoji in there. I want to see how many people are actually utilizing this. And while you're doing that, so utilize, there we go. Yes, sir. I like it. Of course, Sean. There we go. All right. We got a robot. We got a yes. So we've used ChatSpot. Here's my history for ChatSpot when it comes to portal cleanup. I started with, let me go back. This is my history. I started with, how can I clean up this portal? And so ChatSpot a few months ago, said, hey, I can't do that just yet. But now we're starting to see the refinement in here. We're starting to be able to see, okay, how many contacts do I have? Let me see contact lists from California. Show a monthly summary of new contacts last quarter. So those of you that have used this and have answered yes, I've used ChatSpot before. Yes, we can do this. So if you want to get that high-level overview, It's not a matter of going through and digging through. Let's work smarter, not harder. Let's let the robots help us out. And so let's go back to my history here. I did a couple of other things. We got a portal. Start with a portal summary here, and I'll give you a summary of all your different objects. So just ask for that, okay? The other thing that I would recommend is taking a look at, hey, how many custom company properties do I have? So rather than going through the list and taking a look at and just counting them up and seeing which ones are there, you can say, okay, I got 286. And then from there, you can take that data and just go into your portal and say, okay, which ones do not have any data associated with them, which is part of the cleanup process here. So any data that's not available there. You can do the same thing with, let's go back to my history. Yes, this is a plugin that is available on HubSpot. So just to give you some ideas, if you just go to chatspot.ai, you can connect it to your HubSpot portal. And so once it's connected to your HubSpot portal, it can now give you this information. So you just got to fill out a couple of forms and then you should be set. One thing that I think is just absolutely incredible here, you can now access ChatSpot AI right here. Rather than going through chatspot.ai, you can access it here. You're already logged in once it's connected to your portal. So take a look at how many custom contact properties that you have. I think we have a lot. Yeah, we have almost 1,000. So from there, so get the high level overview, and then from there, get back into your portal, jump in and dig into, okay, which of these don't have any value? I believe in my history from here, how many of these, I think I asked how many of these are, I don't think it can tell us blank. I can type really. Yeah, but what we can figure out is we can say, I didn't want to try to type enumeration. How many custom properties are enumeration properties? So you can segment and ask ChatSpot, give me details as to how many of these are single line text properties, which is the bane of any CRM, of course. But we have 582. How many custom properties are enumeration properties? 582. And so if we use the robots to help us with some of this higher level things, we can say, okay, now that I know this information, rather than going through and manually having to count this up, I can jump into my portal and just really dig into the data. So I want to start with this, and that will be outlined in this process here. Figure out which ones are maybe you want to get rid of those enumeration properties. Maybe you want to get rid of those properties that are single line text, things like that. So do the high level and then jump into your portal and dig into it. Do you have to do it all in 2 hours? No. Maybe you just say, you know what? Today's the day I'm cleaning up my company properties as part of my cleanup process. So let's see. Start with ChatSpot AI. So that's going to help you with your audit using the resources that are here, checking your audit log, and checking your security settings, making sure that you have your original source view set up and have your lists set up, because these will now be a part of your quarterly cleaning. And actually, I would probably recommend doing this almost monthly, but that's just me. I just am kind of hypersensitive to clean data. So let's talk about the quarterly cleaning. Not a lot here. I'm a bit of a minimalist here, but I think we have a pretty good resource that will help you with this. And this is my checklist that I like to go through. There's actually 2 of these that I have available to you. One is in the format of a Google Sheet, and the other is in the format of just a list. So what I would do, and of course, these are all going to be available to you. What I'm going to do is, here is the list, showing the list here. And let's just open up the checklist here. Let's start with the list, which is over here. These are the questions that are being asked as you look through this audit list. So I'm not going to read this to you, but essentially I took these questions and I put them in here in the comments. So you can see, visit the security center. We just talked about that. Check your score. How can it be improved? So all of those comments are on this list right here. This sheet I designed it so that you can use it throughout the entire year and so that you can show people exactly what is happening and what your score is when it comes to your data cleaning. So these are a checklist. Let's just say just for the sake of argument, we did an awesome job and this looks great. January, ready to go. Users and teams, we checked it, and we can check all of these and go ahead and make sure that we have the data that we're looking for in here. So this is a nice reference for yourself. I would say use this list for yourself, but as we all know, whatever gets shown or whatever gets measured gets managed. Well, let's take it a step further. Whatever gets displayed, whatever gets shown to your team, that's what gets managed as well. And so what I like to do on this is create a dashboard. If I can find it, let's go to the correct dashboard here. And I think, yep, no, it's not this one. Please hold as I locate it. There we go. What I did was I created this data management dashboard. And I think this action right here, add images, text, or video, and add external content, probably two of the most underutilized pieces when it comes to creating dashboards, because there are no templated reports here. What I have here is a video, yours truly. What I have here is basically a Google slideshow that walks people through all the different things that we're talking about here. So why don't we create a data management dashboard, and then here's our list that I was just showing you, so that we can take this list and show the rest of the team, this is how we're doing from a data standpoint. This is what needs to be improved. So rather than going through and having your team roll their eyes and say, oh, it's the data crazy person who loves data and this is what we need to do, you can show them and say, hey, our email health for January, not doing so hot these days. Or we need some work on that because it's yellow, as you can see from here. We need to check on our CTAs and clean those things up. We need to do these sorts of things because, again, if you can look at it quickly and just say, hey, how are we doing? Let's focus in on the red things and manage those things and show everyone using a data dashboard, then it's more likely that people will say, you know what, based on the documentation, which we'll talk about later, based on the documentation, these are the things that I can do to help with this. And so when it comes to the process of doing this on a monthly basis, show people, show your team your expectation. Show the team what you are working on to make sure that when they do get into that sales call, they have the right information that they need to further the conversation that they're having. They have the right data that they need because it was easy to find, because you took the time to show them, display to them what needs to happen in order to make this data visible, easy to find, and easy to use. So that's my recommendation. Of course, if you don't have Operations Hub is, of course, amazing when it comes to data management and things like that. But if you don't have Operations Hub, this is the way to do it. Create a data management dashboard. And as you can see here, I've mentioned people on my team so that they know, they get a notification within HubSpot to say, hey, this is available. I'm going to walk you through how we did last month. And this is my expectation when it comes to what we need to do with data. And then put your documentation in there, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So a data management dashboard. And of course, those are just suggestions there. Use the resources that I'm providing for you. But what other data management metrics do you want to reinforce? You can put in there a glossary of terms just with a simple text box that says, hey, this is our naming convention. Make sure when you're creating assets, this is what you need to do so that it's clear and concise and everyone can find it when they need it. So let's talk a little bit about organization. I am gonna, I must be wowing you guys. Not a ton of questions so far. So we'll save some questions for the end, unless I did tell Tony and Sean that if there's anything that was pressing, they can go ahead and interrupt me. But if you don't have any questions at the halfway point here, I'm just gonna go ahead. Okay, your silence confirmed this. Okay, let's talk about organizing things. Now, these are things that you probably know already, but I wanted to bring them up again because sometimes it's very easy to get in a rut or get in a very simple process with HubSpot and doing the same thing over and over again. So make sure that your lists are organized. This resource here is actually probably one of the best resources. There's a link here from the 2175 group that basically says, hey, this is different ways that you can organize your lists. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into HubSpot portals and it's just page upon page upon page of lists. And while we can take a look at and say what lists haven't been used in the last, I think, 60 days is what HubSpot says, there's no organization to it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And so let's go ahead and organize our data and our lists by campaigns, specific campaigns that we're working on. How about life cycle stages? Why not lead statuses? And of course, the all important, make sure that you don't email these people. So take a look at this resource when you get a chance, because it expands much further than just these 4 segments here. Campaigns, life cycle stage, lead statuses, do not email. I think for me, those are the ones that I use most commonly. And that's what I recommend to the people that I work with when we get into HubSpot and there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. People sometimes have a good idea of how to search for lists, but a lot of times if you have somebody that is new in the organization and they have no idea how this is organized, having it organized in this way and being able to document and say, this is how we operate, is going to make onboarding that much easier. Let's talk about folders. I remember in 2019 at Inbound 2019, when they introduced folders for workflows, which I believe one product manager told me, we just thought it was just a simple thing. Well, the people that were there just like went nuts when they revealed it, because we have been asking for this for so long. And it seems like with so many new advancements and new features that HubSpot just pumping out these days, putting everything into folders, I might have missed something here, but definitely have folders for your campaigns, have folders for your different emails, so that it's not just that list upon list upon list. Because again, people are going to take a look at the most recent thing that they've used or the most recent thing that they've created. So let's organize it by campaigns, by emails. Let's organize your workflows. Let's make sure that we organize our snippets. We can even have personal folders. A lot of folks that I have worked with have said, I want a personal folder for my snippets. I want a personal folder for my templates. Great. Make as many folders as you want, because that's why it's there. So that we're not just looking at a ton of lists that have no naming convention, no way of really organizing these things. So anything that's sales collateral, snippets, templates, documents, make sure that you are organizing them by folder. We talked a little bit about, and this is where it might be a little bit difficult, talked a little bit about having too many super users or super admins in your HubSpot portal. And so what I would recommend is reset your user profiles and reset those permissions. Now, if you're just getting started with HubSpot, that's easy to do it on the front line. I always say, let's lock it down and give people exactly what they need, and then we can then loosen up the reins as they need more things or as they have more experience. For those of you that are more experienced or you have too many super users, this is going to be a little bit of a harder sell, but I think it's going to be important so that people are only have access to the things that they need. And so this knowledge document, HubSpot basically tells you how to do this, what's the best way to reset those permissions, and then we can also take this and let's have permission sets. And I believe this is an enterprise function, but if we think about it in this way, even if you're not on enterprise, setting up those permission sets is going to, like Tony just said in the chat there, save you so much trouble coming down the line. So we can have marketing parent and child teams. Have sales their own permission set, service support permission set. Obviously, those of you that are super admins, use a permission set. And so when you're doing this data audit, what I would do is come in here, show people this is where we're lacking in our data. And so that is why I'd like to reset some of our permissions so that you only have access to what you absolutely need, so that we're thinking more essential rather than keeping everything open. There's a great book called Essentialism. I really appreciated it because it's like, what do you absolutely need? Instead of saying, well, let's just give you all of this just in case. Taking the time now to either reset or set up those permission sets is much better than having the mess that you're going to have later on when it comes to data. So again, like Tony said, I think he's in agreement with me here. Setting up permissions, the right permissions, and the permission sets is going to be very important. And those sets are going to be great. And that's really why most people set up so many super admins, because it's so easy to just say, oh, just make them a super admin. If you're setting up those permissions, your permission sets the right way, you're documenting them, you'll be able to say, oh, set them up, they're on the sales team, done. Rather than making them a super admin and giving them, as HubSpot says, too much power to too many people. So I've mentioned this a lot of times, and I'm going to kind of, so that we have enough time for any questions at the end here, I'm going to talk about a little bit about documentation. All of this is great, but it's not going to be useful if you don't document it and share it with the people in your organization. If you keep this within your own silo, you will be frustrated. You will be saying, I just cleaned this place up and now it's a mess again. So, but if we have the documentation, and as you're going through this process, document what you want to do. As you go through the process that in these resources that I'm prescribing here, document how you're going to do this. Document where to find all these different things. So a couple of things that we can document. Do we need to document every single little thing, like every single folder that's inside of every single snippet that's available for snippet? Probably not. But at least have a statement that says, we are doing this. Make sure that when you set up your snippet, you have a personal folder, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So first things first, make sure that you determine what needs to be documented. And that means we got to get everybody sitting down together at the table and have an interdepartment conversation. What are the skills that people need to know? That's part of the documentation as well. How we're going to be creating landing pages, how we're going to be creating and sending marketing guide to CTAs. And again, if you do this in Google, you can easily upload this to a dashboard, create a video walking them through this rather than waiting. Move beyond just the current state of like, here's how to do this, here's how to do this. That's very tactical and that's very helpful. But I want you to imagine in your head that you've won the lottery and the next day is your last day. And you have to turn the reins over to the next HubSpot administrator. I know I should pause and let everyone just imagine that, winning the lottery, especially with what the Powerball's up to these days. But consider the next person that's coming up. What are they going to want to see? And this is a great opportunity for those of you that are in a hug, that are connected to other HubSpot users. Hey, will you take a look at my documentation, how we are using it? Is it clear? Does it make sense? Now, of course, there's some information that may be proprietary, but can you take a look at this? Liz, of course, you're so helpful. I appreciate that. Or you can, when we're getting together at Inbound, you can just say, hey, this is what I would do as far as for the next HubSpot administrator. And yeah, Allie, I feel for you there. Yeah, we're working through the painful process of getting everyone back to the same thing. Yeah, that's so important to do that work, because I mentioned this on my interview with Sean earlier, that if you're just using HubSpot to just push information out, again, you're only half using HubSpot. What's the data that's coming back in? If that data is not organized, if that data isn't following a process, and the people on your team are kind of using it, but not using it to any consistency, well, you're half using HubSpot, maybe 3/4 of the way using HubSpot. But if everyone's on the same page, and Allie, I love that you're doing the right work, because it's good work there. it's important to make sure that you have these things documented. So a couple of things to help you with that documentation, even internal communication processes. Man, the moment that I figured out that you can @mention somebody, my team, I think I drove them nuts because I comment on all assets for collaboration. HubSpot has even built in those collaboration tools. I organize notes now with hashtags so that they're easily found, so that it used to be that you couldn't search for them, but use those hashtags so that you can find related notes and kind of get them organized and find them easily. I utilize internal workflows for in-app notifications to notify my team for different things that need to happen. And then I have the documentation on the how we use HubSpot dashboard so they can then say, okay, I just got this notification. What am I supposed to do next? And this is, I really like this right here, this knowledge document, how to set up user notifications. So when you're setting up those permission sets, make sure that you also, this is available for everybody. Set up your user notifications. Don't just trust that they're going to have what they need. Rather, you set it up as the HubSpot administrator, as the HubSpot super user, and say, these are the notifications that you're definitely going to need. And when you get notifications, here's the next step. And then finally, if nothing else, use those naming conventions. And I have a few suggested in here. Some of them get to be a little bit, they could get complicated. But if you have it documented somewhere, if you have it documented or easily referenced on your dashboard, data dashboard, everyone can be using it and everyone can be doing it the same way. So my hope is that after gone through all that, I do see that there are a couple of questions here, but I hope that throughout this our time together, these 45 minutes together, that you have found that if you discipline yourself and you have a process and use the resources that I have there, you might say, oh, this resource is good, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit for my organization in this way. If you use those things and you get that consistent basis going and moving, it's like a snowball effect. Yes, you will get these slides. You'll actually have access. Don't forget, I'll put this on the first slide here. This right here will open up your folder where you have access to all of these things. So Tony's going to take care of all of that. But my hope is that you discipline and get ready to do that audit. I know that Allie, you're in the middle of that. So do the audit first. Figure out how you're going to do quarterly cleaning, break that into months, organize everything, and then make sure that you document so that you get it outside of your silo so that we're not just creating amazing HubSpot things in there. That's all I have. I'm going to check the Q&A right now. I'll stop sharing my screen and guess that that Tony will be joining us. All right, let's see. I have a client sports leader over the database, over 2 million contacts. Ooh, yeah. 2 million contacts. These are great questions. And it looks like there's two here. How would you recommend the approach to clean? But legacy HubSpot portal is accumulated thousands of workflows pages over the years. Specifically, where would we start? How can we prioritize what to address first and what best practices should we follow to tackle email delivery issues stemming from all this clutter? I would actually start with some of the automation that you have. So one of the first things that you mentioned here is workflows. And so to answer your question, I would say start with workflows and see which ones have been turned off, which ones are not even activating. Figure out what's in your HubSpot portal that's not being used right now. And workflows is one of the easiest ways to go to first. Then, and I love the way that you listed this in your question. So you start with workflows, then go to lists and say, okay, which ones when were they created? So this is a legacy HubSpot portal. You could probably backtrack as far as possible and say, okay, which one of these are not in use? And HubSpot does give you a nice little tab that says, hey, this list hasn't been used in 60 days, but that's where I would go next. Go to your workflows, see what the automation is happening, and then go to your lists. And then from there, it looks like you have some pages. I would then follow that process that I have outlined in some of the resources. So with 2 million contacts, that's going to take some time. But if you just chip away at it, it's like that old phrase, how to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Just do a little bit every single day. Probably not going to get it done in a day. Probably not going to be a week. But with 2 million contacts, you'll eventually get there.
Also a good plug for OpsHub. If you have that many clients, that many contacts, definitely check out OpsHub. It'll save you a lot of time down the line. Looks like we've got another question in the general chat from Liz. She says, It'll be tough getting some super users to step down. Our director of operations owns HubSpot and he doesn't even know how to turn off notifications. Any recommendations for approaches to overbearing coworkers?
Yeah, that's a great, I would actually do a bit of an audit for maybe a month and see how often are you logging in? How often are you, even though you're the owner, what's your daily, how are you using HubSpot on a daily basis? So again, data really tells a lot of stories. So if you can find that data and get that data and be able to present that data to say, listen, I know that you're the director of operations. However, is this something I could take off of your plate? Because it looks like even though you have so many, you have all this HubSpot power, but you're not utilizing it on a daily basis. And I'm somewhat blessed to be part of Impact, where we work a lot on communication. So Liz, I would recommend role playing that with a colleague or even with a trusted friend to be able to say, okay, how can I present this in a way that I can be radically candid with this person, but not not make him or her feel like I'm just taking everything away from them. So that's a delicate situation. So start with the data.
Any other questions? He'll be triggered, but that is a good point.
Yeah, I do not envy you. That's a tough conversation to have. But Radical Candor by Kim Scott is a very good book. She's actually presenting, I think, at Inbound. So check out her session. You probably have to reserve your seat. So jump on the Buggy app and save that seat. Marketing contact status, workflow based on undesirable traits, lack of engagement. Okay. How would you handle removing marketing contact status? This is one thing I actually forgot to mention. I'm glad you brought this up, Emma. What I recommend to my clients is when you're going from marketing to non-marketing or non-marketing into marketing, either way, if you have marketing contacts in your HubSpot portal as part of your portal, I always recommend before the end of the month. Because as you know, everything resets at the beginning of the month with those marketing contacts. So again, this is the way that HubSpot this is so that people don't game the system by raising up 2,000 contacts and then bringing them down and then raising up and then bringing them down. So that's why it resets on a monthly basis. So if you go to marketing, if you go to your account menu and go to users and settings, or I think not settings, but it's hold on. I can see it. I just, you know how it is. I'm talking to HubSpot people here. You know what it's like. You go to your account menu, go to account and billing, there it is, and then go to usage and limits. And there's a wizard there that says manage marketing contacts. Control your contacts and make sure you only pay for the ones that you market to. And then it says the next update. Before that update, click that button, manage marketing contacts, because it walks you through, here are your lists, here are the people that are marketing, here are the people that are non-marketing, and what do you want to do with them? So that this way, when everything resets for the month, you're ready to go and you know exactly what to expect. So that's part one. How would you handle removing marketing contact status? And then for two, so once you've identified those, you can also do that. I mean, you can just figure out what are your parameters, go into the contacts and just do it, just bulk edit marketing contact status. I like the wizard because it kind of walks you through step by step. Workflow based on undesirable traits and lack of engagement. So That's a good one. I would say probably rather than a workflow, I might actually do an active list. And if there's a property associated with that undesirable trait, I love that. If there's a property associated with that, or a lack of engagement property that you have defined that's specific maybe to your vertical, I would say create a list off of that, an active list that puts them on that list when they meet that undesirable trait. And then you can say, okay, let's take a look at this. These are the people that, and again, identify it and then say, hey, I need whoever you need to, somebody from sales, somebody from marketing, or maybe the contact owner. I need you to take a look at this list. We've identified these people with undesirable traits and we want to move them. Now I got to use it. I want to put it on a t-shirt almost, undesirable traits. Please don't have them. Anyway, I would then say, okay, let's take a look at this list. These are the people I identified of having this undesirable trait. Tell me where I'm wrong. What am I missing? That's how I would handle those two.
Looks like we got time for one more question in the Q&A. The question is, do you recommend any third-party tools like InCycle, or will OpsHub solve any of these problems?
Yeah, so InCycle tells you, I haven't used InCycle, I'm familiar with it, but it tells you what your data is about, and then helps you clean it as well. Operations Hub does the same thing. It basically says, hey, this is what your data looks like. If I were to choose between the two, it's really going to depend upon your budget, because the Operations Hub it's already in the HubSpot environment. I would go with that hands down if money were no object, because that's going to be, you'll be very familiar with it. InCycle might be a little bit less expensive, but you may have to do some tweaking in order to get it to work. But either way, I'm going to look at your next question. That they'll tell you that will help you with your data, but it won't necessarily improve your deliverability. That's going to happen over time. So I wish that there were, a magic button that you could switch, or an integration that you could just say, we have this integration now, and now our deliverability has gone way up. That's something that's going to happen over time as you clean the data, as you're getting more opens. There's no magic wand for improving the deliverability.
Well, thank you so much, Will. That was really great. I learned a ton. Like
Cool.
I said, I've been a HubSpot user for a long time, and old dogs can learn new tricks. So thank you so much for coming and teaching us all that. That was really great. Our next meetup is going to be on Thursday, September 14th, the 4 Horsemen of the Inbound Apocalypse, spelled correctly next time. So thank you, Warren, for pointing that out. Hope you guys all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, y'all.